From official government declassified documents to pilot reports where there are cases which have made Air Force brass sit down and pay close attention. In this episode of Tales of the Strange and Unexplained, we will cover such cases. And so, with this, I'm on a journey of discovery. I'm seeking answers to some of the most challenging questions that face mankind, and many nuggets of knowledge that could bring those answers or unsolved cases and tales of the strange and unexplained. And this show focuses on recounting cases and stories of the unknown phenomena, mysterious events, weird places, and the unexpected. So please make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on the case we're about to cover today. But before we get started, I do want to give a quick shout out to Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp for their kind support and acknowledgement of the inquiries about the jellyfish UFO drone video that I posted on Twitter, rather than just simply dismissing the tweet. And actually, the interest of that video began when a high schooler sent me that drone video. And it's the kids and the younger generation that are the future for this UFO topic. And intriguingly, this drone in that video in particular was actually constructed in someone's garage, which brings us to a fascinating question that was posed by the same high schooler. And it was, is there a military equivalent to this jellyfish UFO? And this scenario as a whole underscores psychological divide between those eager for these jellyfish UFO videos to be true, while others, and specifically skeptics, are so quickly to dismiss them. And so, my aim, just like yours, is to seek answers, asking questions driven by that shared curiosity that we both have. And I'm also very aware of the criticism that you both face in this topic, and I definitely admire your resilience. And now, there have been many people who have come forward to share their stories and encounters, and a handful of them have been studied by different world governments. So we're going to start off with the Gorman UFO incident of 1948. I'm going to share my screen here and we're going to get into this one. Have you heard of this case? This one is actually very cool because the Gorman UFO incident of 1948, also known as the Gorman dogfight, is one of the early notable encounters between a pilot and a UFO in the post-World War II era. And the incident occurred on the evening of October 1st. What year? 1948, near Fargo, North Dakota. And the witness, George F. Gorman, was a 25-year-old lieutenant in the North Dakota Air National Guard at the time. Now, this is a really interesting case because when he was flying a PF-1 Mustang. Remember that, because we're going to get back to that. After a cross-country flight with other Guard members, and he decided to engage in some night flying to log more flight time. And as he prepared to land at around 9 p.m. local time, Gorman noticed a light passing on his right, and he described the object as a ball of light approximately 6 to 8 inches in diameter, which moved at high speeds and exhibited extraordinary maneuvers. Now, curious about the object's nature, Gorman pursued it, initiating a series of maneuvers in an attempt to get close to this ball of light. And he reported that the object and his plane had come head to head at one point, forcing him to dive to just avoid collision. Now, this is very frequent when it comes to looking at post-World War II accounts when we are dealing with Foo Fighters. This case, in that regard, is no exception, but there's more to this because Gorman, he decided to follow this object, and reporting that he finally got behind it at around 7,000 feet when it made a sharp turn and headed straight for that PF-1 Mustang. And almost at that point of collision, Gorman dived and said that the light had passed over his canopy at about 500 feet before cutting sharply once more and headed back in his direction. And just as collision seemed imminent once again, Gorman said that the object shot straight into the air into a steep climb, so steep that when he tried to intercept, the plane stalled at about 14,000 feet, and the object was never seen again. But according to Gorman, He had been engaged in aerial maneuvers with it for about 27 minutes by the time that he had brought his plane back down to land. Many times, when people have Foo Fighter experiences, they'll only last a few moments, maybe a few minutes at best. But in this case, this is where Gorman's encounter stands out, among a few other details that we will cover. But one of them being he was interacting with this object, whatever it may be, for 27 minutes. And when you are filled with adrenaline, in this case, because there were a handful of near collision instances, those 27 minutes probably felt like a few hours. And the incident was then investigated by the US Air Force as part of Project Sign, the first official investigation into UFOs. And initial explanations suggested that Gorman might have been chasing, guess what it is? A weather balloon. I mean, nice and original, right? Or even the planet Jupiter here. Yeah, definitely. And then this potentially contributing to the misidentification. But as anyone would, Gorman, he disputed those explanations, asserting that the object's flight characteristics did not match those of a balloon or any kind of aerial phenomena. But here's where it gets good, because Gorman wasn't the only one that was witnessing these things in the sky, because it was also witnessed by air traffic controller Lloyd D. Jensen and H.E. Johnson, who were manning the Hector Airport Tower. And according to Johnson, who reported seeing the Piper Cub and the UFO at the same time, the object was, quote, traveling at a high rate of speed and, quote, was fast enough to increase the spacing between itself and the flyer, in this case, Gorman. And then Johnson described the object as appearing to be only a round light, perfectly formed, with no fuzzy edges or rays leaving its body. Then we have Dr. A.E. Cannon, the pilot of the Piper Cub, and his passenger also viewed the object, both in the sky and upon their return to the airport, where they immediately joined the traffic controllers in the tower. And Cannon described the light as moving very swiftly, much faster than the 51 Mustang. So then you have the two civil um, Aeronautics Authority employees on the ground also reported seeing the object. But then we have to consider the aftermath. With all of these witnesses, how did the Air Force, how did the government, how did the military handle the situation? And what's really interesting is that there was an interview done with Gorman and Major Donald C. Jones, the commanding officer of the 178th Fighter Squadron. And there were also two witnesses that were sitting in during this interview, one of them being Captain Ernest Winterquist and Lieutenant Donald M. Surley. And in this, and I'm going to just kind of briefly cover this interview, that is a really fascinating one, because Gorman mentioned that his initial query to the tower was made at 2107, where Gorman inquired if there were any aircraft in the vicinity besides himself and a Cub, which is always needs to be asked when you are seeing a UFO is, could it be something mundane? Can it be seen on radar? That should be protocol. Now, is it? Not necessarily, but I feel like it definitely should be. And so then the control tower responded, indicating that they were unaware of any other local aircraft. And following this, Gorman informed the tower of his position and the location of that UFO and announced his intention to pursue it. And during this chase, Gorman estimated coming within less than 500 feet of the object at the closest point, highlighting a moment when he executed a head on pass with the object flying directly over him. And interestingly, the object seemed rather small when observed up close, appearing to be, once again, 6 to 8 inches in diameter. And Gorman described the object as a white light, notable for its lack of glare and distinct edges, prompting question about its nature and origin, especially given its apparent lack of depth. Why is this prevalent? Why are those details so important? It's because he mentioned all of that on record. He wasn't just giving an interview to a TV show, he wasn't just casually talking to a friend, but this interview, these details that he provided are now on record. And so some other key takeaways is that this encounter was 27 minutes long, where you have a pilot chasing a UFO. And this is a very, very prevalent theme in UFO history, I would like to say, when it comes to pilots, is many of them are not scared. They say, I'm going to try and chase this thing down. I want to see if I can get those answers. And the majority of them, if not all of them, failed to do so properly or just catch it and make that information public. So this is just one case of many that really does catch people's attention. And this one was firmly documented and also caught by many newspapers as well. Here is an example of one. If you are watching this on a video platform, if you are listening to this, you can find that link to watch the video in the description box below to see the images that we are seeing here. Now, before I even continue, have you heard of this case before? If you have, hit that like button right down below. And if you haven't, also hit that button right down below, that little thumbs up right there. Now, I do want to just mention this because this is really, really exciting news for me, and I think for a few other people as well, because I have officially, for the very first time ever, have just shipped merch to many of my incredible Patreon supporters, and those in the UK have already received their packages. Now, Patreon is just a great platform to support the channel, plus it's a place where members can access exclusive, original merch that is not for sale. That's the best part, is that you can't buy it anywhere. But if you are a Patreon, you can definitely get it. And you can't find the designs anywhere either, because I make all of them. They're all original. And also you get access to behind the scene videos, images, projects, like sneak peeks into projects as well. And I even reveal my super ultra secret ramen recipe. Okay. That's also there as well. And of course, you do get updates in advance. So if you like this channel, if you like the work that I do here, consider being a Patreon supporter. Getting into our next case here. This one's a famous one. This one catches a lot of people's attention, myself included, and I think that you are going to really like it if you're not familiar with it. And this is the Thomas Mantell UFO incident in that exact same year. We're looking at 1948, and guess what? He was flying the exact same plane, the PF-1 Mustang. Remember I said remember that? Because we're bringing it back here. Because this is a cornerstone case in UFO history, taking place on January 7th, 1948, and it also involved the tragic death of Captain Thomas F. Mantell, a pilot for the Kentucky Air National Guard. And Mantell's encounter with a UFO ended fatally when his PF-1 Mustang fighter plane crashed near Franklin, Kentucky, after he pursued to what he believed to have been a UFO. And the incident began when the Kentucky State Police reported to Godman Army Airfield about a strange object seen in the sky. And in response, Mantell, who was flying nearby, was asked to investigate. During the pursuit, Mantell described the object as metallic and of a tremendous size, a description that was relayed over the radio to the control tower. And Mantell pursued the object to an altitude of about 25,000 feet, and lacking oxygen equipment, he reportedly blacked out due to the hypoxia, leading to his fatal crash. And the U.S. Air Force investigated the incident as part of Project Signed, and the persecutor for the most famous Project Blue Book, which was tasked with investigating UFO sightings, initially there was speculation that Mantell might have been chasing Venus or even a US government balloon. I know that's terrible, and it's the exact same example that we heard just a little bit earlier with the first case when it comes to Gorman. Now, Let's continue on with this because declassified documents later revealed that the object that Mantell was chasing was likely part of a classified Navy endeavor known as the Skyhook Project, which was only mentioned after, okay, and I'm emphasizing the word after, there was a re examination of the incident in the 1950s. So this took place in 1948. And they said, we don't know what happened. And then they did a re examination because of Project Blue Book, because specifically with Captain Edward Rupert, the former head of Project Blue Book, he looks over the paperwork and he says, you know what? You know what it is, guys? It's Skyhook. It's the super ultra secret Skyhook project. That's what Mantell was chasing, and that's what he lost his life to. So the initiative was aimed at gathering atmospheric radiation data using high altitude balloons. And Mantell, mistaking one of these balloons for a spacecraft, climbed up to 25,000 feet without proper oxygen equipment, leading to his loss of consciousness and then the subsequent crash of the aircraft on the front lawn of a farmhouse near Franklin, Kentucky. Can we believe that to be the case? Is that just a cover up or is that truth? And when we're looking at these cases, that's where this speculation lies, and where when we've looked at all of the disinformation and misinformation in this topic, how do you know what to believe and what not to believe? Now, we have to give Thomas the benefit of the doubt that with all of his hours, all of his flight hours, that he would know what a weather balloon looks like. Don't you think? And so then for him to for his family to find out that, oh, the reason to why your husband, your father, your uncle passed away is because obviously he wasn't that intelligent and he was chasing a balloon so high up and he didn't have any oxygen and then he crashed. That's almost insulting to hear. Now, is that the case? I really, really want to give Thomas the benefit of the doubt here and say he probably saw something that he could not explain. Now, what was that? Only he knows that answer. But in this case, he also, we are aware that the policeman reached out to the National Guard and say, hey, can you look into this? So he wasn't the only witness. There were a handful of other people that thought it looked so weird, so much so that it needed to be investigated. And this is just one case of several that people like to talk about when it comes to pilots and their conflicts with UFOs. But here's a little bit more. So here's actually a newspaper clipping of this incident, and we're going to get into that one in just a moment. Looks like I didn't save it. So also with this, he does have a grave site, and obviously he has a grave site, but it goes into more detail on his case and how he passed away. But he was the very first flight casualty of the Kentucky Air National Guard, and his remains were brought back to Louisville and buried at Zachary Taylor National Cemetery. Excuse me. So this is one that when we look at, it's a devastating case, and it's one of two that we'll actually be covering that are detrimental and truly very sad here. And Julian, thank you so much for becoming a YouTube member. I do appreciate it. Hopefully you are liking all the content that you are seeing right here. Francis is saying swamp gas. Could that have been what Thomas was chasing this whole time? That's also terrible. Mark is bringing a really interesting question. Was Thomas cremated? I am not aware of that information. I'm really, really not. But I do think that's a really interesting question because let's say he wasn't, right? People could do an autopsy. Well, they probably have to actually before cremation. But where is that paperwork? That's a good point. Where is the autopsy paperwork? Is it made public? I didn't come across it. But was he cremated is another really fantastic question. I know, a sarcasm, Francis. I got you. P says, was he abducted? This is one that I'm not too sure of just because he had passed away before kind of giving out any information. All we are aware of is that he was chasing an object in the sky. He lost too much, he didn't have enough oxygen, and his plane crashed. And his body was found and it was buried. But could he have been abducted in that time frame? Maybe, but we're going to get into another case that might kind of fall into that peace of mind. Getting into our next one, maybe like one of my favorite cases, and I wish it was talked about more. I really, really do. And it's the Washington, D.C. UFO incident of 1952. And why is this one of my favorites? Let me tell you. For many reasons. But people always say, I won't believe in UFOs until they land on the White House lawn. This one's kind of close to that. And it didn't happen once. It happened several times, being called a UFO flap. So it wasn't a one incident kind of deal. It was several days worth. And that's why this one is just a highlight case, but people always talk about Roswell in 1947, which is a great one. Yes, but this one's insane. This one's just like awesome. And this is an actual newspaper clipping that we are looking at right here on the screen. Mark says it's also one of his favorite cases. It's so good. It's such a good one. Okay, so for those that aren't familiar with it, I got you. Let's get into this one. Because shortly before midnight on July 19th, 1952, at Washington National Airport, currently known as the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, air traffic controller Edward Nugent, observed 7 UFOs in the sky to the southwest of Washington, D.C. And Nugent solicited verification from his peers to ensure the accuracy of what he was witnessing. Upon review, they affirmed that the radar equipment was functioning correctly and the objects observed were not adhering to conventional flight patterns. Shortly therefore, the controllers noticed additional luminous objects positioned over significant landmarks, including the White House, where President Harry S. Truman resided, and the Capitol building. Can I just say this? President Harry Truman is a very, very interesting character in so many aspects. He added a lot to the military. He added tidbits to the government more so than other presidents. And so I just think, this is just me thinking outside the box here, I just think it's rather interesting that out of all the times we've had presidents since 1776, this is the first time, to the public's knowledge, that a UFO has been flying in DC and over the Capitol building when Truman was president. I just want to point that out. Why couldn't it have been Eisenhower or, I don't know, Nixon or Trump or Biden, right? It's Truman. All right, let's continue on with this. So in response, jet fighters were dispatched from the Newcastle Air Force Base in Delaware during the early hours of July 20th, 1952, because again, the first sighting just happened right before midnight of July 19th. So as soon as they were seeing this, pilots were called in from Delaware to say, hey, go check this out because this is you can't go in this airspace, all right? It's a no-go zone. And so the jets, when they approached the city, the UFOs vanished from both radar and visual contact. And the situation grew just more intriguing when the UFOs reappeared on radar just as the jets, depleted of fuel, headed back to Delaware. Let me repeat that in maybe different words. UFOs were seen. The jets come in from Delaware. They're trying to find it. They can't find it. They run out of fuel. They head back to Delaware, and the UFOs, they pop back up, and they're like, "Hey, we're still here, but we don't really want to be chased by you." That's a cat and mouse kind of game. So the reoccurrence led controllers to speculate that the unidentified craft might possess the capability to monitor and respond to radio communications. And by the time dawn broke, the objects had ceased to appear on radar and could no longer be seen visually. But then we got to bring in another date, and that is the evening of July 26th at around 8 p.m. A pilot and a flight attendant on a flight heading towards the airport observed unusual lights above their plane. And fighter jets were once again dispatched from Delaware to the capital, with air traffic controllers reporting multiple UFOs on radar. And during this encounter, one of the fighter pilots managed to spot the peculiar light and initiated a pursuit, as we will hear a lot in these stories. However, he quickly observed that the UFO's velocity far exceeded the capabilities of his aircraft, forcing him to abandon the chase. So, following 2 weekends marked by these unidentified aerial occurrences, President Truman requested a briefing from a representative of Project Blue Book. And this initiative, a newly established Air Force program, you got to thank Truman for that one, was tasked with the investigation and documentation of UFO sightings. And amidst the tension of the Red Scare and the Cold War, Project Blue Book's objectives were to assess whether UFOs represented a threat to national security and to overtake a scientific analysis of the collected data and eyewitness accounts. So the leader of the Air Force's own Project Blue Book, once again, Captain Edward Rupert, was not consulted prior to the press conference. And what's actually really interesting about this is that, at least according to the story, Rupert didn't know anything about this sighting until he was in DC reading the newspaper. No one informed him on this incident. So he later publicly denounced the Air Force's explanation, saying that temperature inversions were already well documented radar anomalies, and what happened in Washington, D.C. was not related to an alien invasion. I love this case so much. I'm telling you, it is seriously one of my favorites. There's so many facets to this, but one piece that I just found bizarre, and actually I didn't know until rather recently, at least again, as the story goes, allegedly here, is that Edward Rupert didn't even know what was going on until he got to DC, and he says, what? Hold up. There were UFOs being seen? Like, I am the head chief, El Jefe of Project Blue Book, and I didn't know about this? I could only imagine just the immense frustration he must have felt. And then he brushed it off and saying, no, it's just temperature inversions. That's all it is. There's nothing to see here. We are safe. We are fine. Do not ask questions. And please write another article referring to what I said, because it's not UFOs. It's not aliens. Everything is A-okay. But is it? Well, we haven't heard of anything happening similar since. And you know what? I would kind of like that. I feel like that would just be super cool if that was the case in 2024, that were to happen again. Now, would we believe it to be true? Or would we say, it must just be some kind of like media ploy, or it's CGI, or it's weather balloons in this case, once again? Or is it Venus? How would we react in 2024 compared to 1952? Would we have the same mentality? Do you feel like we are ready for another kind of sighting such as this one? Or would it very quickly be brushed off as some kind of hoax? Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the live chat. I do truly want to hear your thoughts on that question. And 405, thank you so much for that super sticker. I do really appreciate that. So let me ask you this while I wait for some responses on the question that I just asked. Is my other question: have you heard of this case? And if you have, when was the last time it was mentioned? Because we don't talk about this one too often, and I wish we did. John says there has been new evidence in the Washington sighting. Can you share a link? Or a book or an article. I want my hands on that. It's really interesting. Sounds so good. I want to know more. Marty says, I think a big event is coming in the next few years. Like, what kind of big event? Hmm? But that's what people have been mentioning rather recently. And it's something that we have to ask. Let's say there is another UFO sighting, like a big one, a mass sighting. Would it be because of a natural disaster, of a non natural disaster, like another nuclear war, like in World War III? Or would it just be like, hey guys, y'all are ready? Y'all are ready for us? Thank you for all of the nice posters and all of the alien merch that you make of us. We are here to tell you that we're real. Like which one is it? You have three options, maybe four if you want to add an extra one in there. But when will something like this happen and how will it happen? Hmm? Serious question. Rock says, I feel like we need something to happen that is undeniable. While I agree with you, everything can be deniable because your eyes can be open, all the facts and data can be provided to you, and people are still going to say, nah, I don't believe it. No, it's not true because they're not willing to look. And so there will never be any situation, any incident where n- it's going to be fully undeniable. People are always going to deny. But it's the open minded people, those that are willing to think of all the possibilities that are our positive future more so than that will lead us to our detriment. At least in my opinion here. This next one, I'm not going to go into great detail on this particular case just because I've done an entire show on the Tehran UFO incident in Iran back in 1976. But if you are not familiar with it, don't worry. I got you. So let's get into this one because this is definitely one that has to be at the very least an honorable mention. But I'm going to give you a summary of this one because the event began September 19th, 1976 when the Imperial Iranian Air Force, the IIAF, received reports from civilians in Tehran, which is the capital of Iran, by the way, of seeing strange lights in the sky. And in response, the IIAF dispatched an F 4 Phantom II jet to investigate. And as the first aircraft approached the coordinates of the sighting, the pilot reported experiencing a series of instrumentation and communication malfunctions, leading to an aborted mission and a return to the base. Now, following the return of the first jet, a second F 4 was sent out to continue the investigation. And the pilot of this aircraft was Lieutenant Parvez Jafari, and the person that we're seeing right here on screen, and managed to get a closer look to the object and provided a detailed description of the UFO. And he says, it was bright. It appeared to be emitting flashing lights with colors altering between blue, green, red, and orange. And it seemed to maintain a distance from the aircraft regardless of how he maneuvered. He referring to Jafari. And most notably, as Jafari attempted to lock on the object with an AIM-9 missile, he suddenly found that his weapons control panel had become inoperable, along with a temporary loss of communication with the ground control. Practically every case that we've covered so far and will continue to cover, all of these pilots that attempt to chase down this UFO, or at the very least get close to the UFO, their technology on their jet, on their plane, just malfunction. And in this case with Jafari, when he was attempting to shoot a missile at it, the object, the thing on the other side was like, are you playing with me? Are you having a little fun? We are not going to let that happen. But this gets even more bizarre because when Jafari is chasing this bigger shaped UFO, all of a sudden, a tiny little ball of light comes out of this bigger UFO and starts chasing it to where they almost have a near collision incident. But they don't. As that's always the case. Every single time they're so close to hit this object, the pilots, and then just like a little sliver, a little hair strand saves them. Are they just playing jokes on the pilots? Do they think it's just funny to have your adrenaline go up so high that you're going to pass out? different people have different senses of humor here. And maybe these objects, these entities, whatever they may be, just find it funny. Or they want to display that they are more powerful than people are, at least at this point in time. Or is it ours? We have to bring in that conversation as well. These Foo Fighters, these objects that pilots are seeing, that people are seeing, are they our military? And if so, do they also have a sense of humor to be playing with these pilots, to just have them want to pass out right then and there when they're just about to hit these objects? If so, that's a very cynical sense of humor, but you know what? Some people have them, and I will not judge you there. So that's just the biggest takeaway on that particular case. If you want to know more details on it, as there is a lot of information, you can find that case right here on my channel. If you just type in the Tehran UFO incident, it'll pop right up. This next one is one that is a really, really fascinating one. And it's also Jimmy Church's favorite UFO case. And we have to talk about it. At the very least, make it an honorable mention, because the disappearance of Frederick Valentich is one of the most mysterious and widely discussed UFO cases. And on the evening of October 21st, 1978, Valentich, a 20-year-old Australian pilot, embarked on a solo flight in a Cessna 182L over the Bass Strait, heading toward King Island from Moorabbin Airport near Melbourne, Victoria. And Valentich, an aspiring professional pilot with about only 150 hours of flying experience, reported encountering an unidentified aircraft exhibiting highly unusual behaviors and capabilities. We have an Australian right here in the chat. That's Tyler right there. This case is for all the Australians. So what's interesting about this one, and what I'm really happy with when it comes to Frederick here, is that even though he only had a limited amount of flight hours, he also followed the protocol, talking to air traffic control towers saying, I'm seeing this weird object in the sky. Do you see it on your radar? This is amazing. Now, is this taught in pilot school? I have no idea because I've never taken it, but I would love to learn how to fly an airplane or even a helicopter. That's like a dream. But in this case, he knew what he was doing. So 45 minutes into the flight at approximately 7:06 p.m., Valentich made radio contact with Melbourne Air Traffic Control to inquire if there were any known aircraft in his altitude. And after being informed that there were no known traffic at that level, Valentich reported an encounter with an unidentified aircraft. And he described the object as having 4 bright lights and an unusual appearance, stating it was orbiting above him and that it was not an aircraft, at least not to his eyes. And during the communication, which lasted for about 5 minutes, Valentich reported that the object was moving at high speed and seemed to be playing a game with him, flying over him and then approaching from various directions. And his last words were famously reported as, "It's hovering and it's not an aircraft." Following this, there was a 17-second unidentified noise described as a metallic scraping sound before the transmission was lost. An exclusive search operation was launched, covering a large area of the Bass Strait, but neither Valentich nor any wreckage of his aircraft were ever found. And the official investigation by the Department of Transport Australia could not determine the cause of the disappearance, and it remains one of Australia's most enduring aviation mysteries. This is one case that people have an infinite amount of theories about. Was Valentich abducted with his craft? Did he go through a portal? It's very much like Amelia Earhart conspiracies and theories. These two can be in the same category here. And it's one that catches a lot of people's imagination. What really happened? And if you are in his shoes, Would you do the same? If you were to see something really bizarre in the sky and you had your pilot license, would you attempt to chase it? And if you were to get into just the same vicinity as this object and you chased it, what then? You don't have little claws that kind of come out of your airplane to try and capture a UFO. So you get up to it and then what? Is it just for the thrill? Just for the adrenaline rush? Is it just to see something? Or do you have an idea of, maybe if I crash into it, we'll both crash and then we will have the fragments of this object? Or, I don't know, I just felt like it. You see what I mean here? There's a lot of people that when they are chasing something, anything, not just a UFO in the sky, but maybe something bizarre on the ground. They all they want to do is chase it, but they don't have the next step in mind on what to do afterward. What would you do? Let me know in the comments. Let me know in the live chat. It's a serious question. Tyler says, after this encounter, I'm not too sure I would follow. I feel like people have that idea. But what if he's encountering this and then all of a sudden a portal shows up? Would you fly through that portal or would you just do a quick swerve and say, no, not today? Maybe tomorrow if I pack extra snacks, but it's not going to happen today. Mark says no wreckage, none whatsoever. The body and the craft were never found. P says, remember to bring snacks. Always remember. Like, I have snacks in my bag, in the car, in my pockets, in all of my jackets. I do not leave the house ever without snacks because you never know what's going to happen. Also, I'm awful when I'm hangry. Like, I'm a dreadful human being. So I never let that happen. I always bring snacks. John says, my curiosity would compel me to chase it. But then what? Because I'm with you on that one. The curiosity, it gets you so far. But also, curiosity killed the cat. You know that saying. But then you chase it, and then what? What happens next? Granola bars, says Tree. Oh, yeah. Always. D says the recovery would have been almost impossible. It's a high possibility that would be the case. Bill says, bring ramen for aliens. Look, that is the best way to make friends, all right? Is to share, to bring snacks and food. I did that as a kid because I had no friends. And so during Halloween, I would pack Halloween candy in my backpack and give it out to people just to try to make friends. And it worked until I ran out of candy. So yes, always bring snacks and always give them out because maybe they're also hangry. Okay. And that's not a good interaction if you're both upset. This next one is kind of more of a refresher because not everyone's familiar with this topic. Not everyone's familiar with these cases. And I'm not going to assume here that you know everything that we cover here on this show. So I'm just going to honestly touch on the Nimitz encounter because this is a serious case. It is one of the most famous cases right now of all time, right next to Roswell. And it's where a pilot had a conflict with a UFO. And so this took place back in 2004. And this is also often referred to as the Tic Tac incident or the Nimitz encounter. And it's called the Tic Tac due to the shape of the UFO involved. And it stands as one of the most well documented and publicly scrutinized UFO sightings in modern history. And the incident took place in mid November of 2004 off the coast of San Diego, California, during a routine training exercise by the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group. And fighter pilots from the Nimitz operating an FA-18 Super Hornet were directed from their training mission to investigate radar anomalies reported by the USS Princeton, a guided missile cruiser that had been tracking unusual aerial objects for several days. And the primary encounter involved Commander David Fravor and Alex Dietrich, who described seeing an object approximately 40 feet in length, shaped like a tic tac, that exhibited extraordinary aerodynamic capabilities, and the object was observed hovering above a disturbance in the water, then rapidly ascending to high altitudes, ex- executing ab- abrupt maneuvers and accelerations far beyond the capabilities of existing aircraft. David Fravor, just like so many other pilots, attempted to chase it and failed, but he is allowed to tell the tale, and he has told the story a handful of times, but very specifically to the government during the UAP witness hearing, which adds just more light to this particular case. Now, as I had mentioned, I was only going to touch on it because I know many people are familiar with it, but I wasn't going to assume here. But I do want to bring this up because we see this image a lot. We have the Tic Tac, the gimbal, and the Go Fast. And these three images kind of just morph into one. For your average person, they see all of these and they say, oh, it's all the Tic Tac or it's all the Go Fast. You see what I'm saying here? So I went ahead and I labeled these and the dates that they happened just to give you a slight refresher. And I'm going to touch on these because the gimbal footage features audio of a crew member exclaiming, "Look at that thing." Okay, we've heard that a lot. And in reaction to an object that seems to move contrary to the wind's direction, and there's speculation among the crew in the video that the object could be a drone. Now you have the Go Fast, which is in many respects the most famous video that people use, where you have the pilot zooming in on the object and saying, "Oh, got him," kind of deal, right? And so, but people, when they see this, they're like, "Oh, it's the Tic Tac." No, 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 no. This one is the Go Fast that we see a lot of that video of. And so this one, just like the gimbal, both took place in 2015. And the reason to why I'm bringing this up is because, well, one, these are very modern cases where pilots, in many respects, are having a conflict with these objects, very specifically with the Tic Tac. But with the gimbal and the Go Fast and the Tic Tac, they were all reported by the Pentagon as being authentic in the year 2020. But these videos had surfaced due to the TTSA, to the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, run by Tom DeLonge, back in 2017 and 2018, when the New York Times when they had posted their very famous article referring to ATIP and Lou Elizondo. So 2017, which is a really impeccable year, but even though those videos had come out in 2017 and 2018, they were just leaked videos. They didn't have as much scrutiny until the Pentagon came forward and said, "Yep, these are authentic videos." And then people were flipping it. They were flipping out. They're like, "Oh my goodness, put this on a t shirt, put this on a cup, put this on a hat," because the time is changing and it is changing now. And they weren't wrong. They were not wrong at all. Now, 2020, interesting time to have released that information, don't you think? People were at home. They didn't know what to do with themselves. And then bam, the Pentagon says, "Yep, these three videos, they are authentic." Out of all the time to do that. Because one took place in 2004, the other two in 2015. People knew about these since 2017, 2018. The Pentagon was sitting on it until 2020. Why? Why that time frame? Here's the thing. They are very timely with their releases. Just like how the DoD OIG Inspector General Robert Storch came forward and said, "Even though I wrote a classified report on UFOs and how the government is just incapable of reporting it properly back in August of last year, he gave a summarized declassified version back in January, specifically January 25th, to tell the world to try and be as transparent as possible." And those are in quotation marks to say, "Yeah, we don't really have a good protocol for this. Like, we don't really know what we're doing here. So we got to somehow create a better office to give a better protocol for all these government agencies and offices to collectively report and research UFOs that are being seen." In 2024, I don't buy it. I don't. But everything is timely. Why pick it now? Why make a declassified report in January versus back in August of 2023? See what I'm saying here? Everything's about the time. But out of all the cases that we covered today, which one was your favorite? Let me know in the live chat. Let me know in the comments, as I do try my absolute best to read all of the comments. Were there a few that you weren't familiar with? Did you know all of them? Let me know. Were there a few pieces of information that you're like, even though I knew this case, I wasn't familiar with that little detail? I do want to know. Let me know, because it's always fun to hear your thoughts and your insights. I want to say thank you to everyone watching this live, all the super chats, super stickers, YouTube members, all of my amazing Patreon supporters, and of course, my incredible moderators as well. Since we're in 2024, I now have a QR code that will take you to all of my social media links, my website, where I write my articles for all of my shows, and so much more right there if you just go ahead and scan it. And if you need help relaxing, falling asleep, meditating, or using your imagination to wander the universe, take a look at my music channel called Cosmic Portals. There I make space ambient music, make it all by myself. I hope you really like it. It helps me relax. I have insomnia, so I originally made it for that, and hopefully it helps you as well. That is it for today. I will actually see you tomorrow for Mysteries with the History at 2:30 p.m. PST. Be safe, and remember, keep your eyes on the skies.